LNG TV, official media channel partner for Gastech 2021.
Well, I am delighted to be joined by Andree Stracke, who is the CEO of RWE Supply and Trade, or RWEST. Thank you so much for joining us here on LNG TV. How are you finding Gastech so far?
Thank you very much for having me. So far we have been very busy. I'm positive surprised how many people came in person actually.
And you were on a panel yesterday. You were discussing how gas and LNG suppliers can effectively reduce emissions across the whole supply chain. So what came out of the panel? What's the answer?
Oh, actually, we need to do our homework first, right? So we truly need to understand where are the gaps. So where are the leakages? How much do we do on flaring? How much do we lose on the gas value chain, on valves and on efficiency sides? Until we know these kind of things, we really need to have third-party surveyors actually looking over it and testing it and giving us the real numbers. And then we need to find out how to reduce them and how can we offset them by, in example, VERs in order to green our industry up.
What are the areas that you particularly think should be looked at in more attention?
On the upstream side, I believe it's flaring and venting where the biggest opportunities are, and of course by drilling as well.
Now, RWEST works across LNG gas, but also renewables, power, and more recently hydrogen. As we try and move towards net zero carbon emissions, where do you see LNG fitting in?
LNG and natural gas, at the end of the day, is the complementary to renewables per se. I think there's no doubt that for the next 15 to 20 years we need natural gas in order to have gas-fired power plants, as well as in transport maybe on LNG, in order to replace oil and to replace other fuels. If we have renewables, there are days or weeks with no wind and with no sun or overnight. So we need to have solutions to have a stable backup actually for the renewables, and natural gas is the fuel actually which has the lowest carbon emissions, and therefore we need gas in order to complement and help the transition in the next 20, 30 years.
Do you think that the industries, or not so much the industry, but do you think that people are aware of that, the importance of LNG, or do you think there was a bit of a rush to try and get to renewables? There
is a rush towards renewables, and it's good that there's a rush towards renewables. But we need gas, and I think the predictions from analysts is that we need roughly until the mid of the next decade where we'll get to the peak of gas demand worldwide, while on the other side, coal already had the peak in 2014, so we are going worldwide down on the coal demand. Oil will get the peak at the mid of this decade or the end of the decade. On gas, we are further out, and I think it's understood. In some countries, we want to do everything at the same time together, but my belief is that we need natural gas or LNG to overcome the downturn of the other fuels first.
Now, previously you were on the board of Accelerate Energy, one of the globe's leaders in FSRUs. Do you think that floating terminals is one way, because they're relatively cheaper and faster to build, floating terminals key to unlocking emerging and smaller markets?
So actually it's more than 10 years ago that I've been the Chief Commercial Officer of Accelerate, but I do believe that getting into new countries, replace coal-fired power plants in some developing countries is actually a very good opportunity, a quick and relatively cheap opportunity to enter these countries. So I think the answer is still yes. So what was true 15 years ago is still a viable opportunity to get into these markets on the gas side.
And now with RWEST, who are a key partner to many of the largest organisations, they rely on energy security to manage both market and financial risk. What's important to you at RWEST when you're creating a bespoke solution for a client?
I think the key word here is trust. With our biggest industrial customers on the technical side, we work very close together to find solutions which are bespoke on these customer needs. We do build in these days in Germany a new backup gas-fired power plant. In this case, the customer is the grid, so the power grid, and they need very quick backups in order to balance the power grids better. But the same is true for industrial customers, where we have got bespoke solutions. On the LNG side, we provide solutions from the financial side. So actually, if customers are interested in TTF indices or JKM indices, we can provide different kind of indices, deliver LNG, and with the financial tools we have got at hand in RWE Supply and Trading, we can risk manage actually these positions and the portfolio for the benefit of the LNG customers.
What next for RWEST in terms of sectors and solutions, services, markets? What's next in the next few years or decade for RWEST?
This is maybe not only RWEST, so I have to speak then on behalf of RWE AG as the entire group.
Yep.
RWE, we are changing entire from an old utility into a renewable company. Over the last years, we have invested 85% of all our investments into renewable and CO2-free business, and we intend to do so further. So all the investment, or the majority of the investments we are doing is going into offshore wind parks. We are the second biggest wind park operator worldwide, and I think we have invested 2 billion euros or $2.4 billion so far across the world. So we have reduced our CO2 emissions by 40% compared to 2012. And until 2040, it's a clear task to be carbon neutral, and this is ahead of German and European standards. So the trend is clear. It is towards renewables. And as we have discussed earlier, the question is, how do we get there, and how do we run our gas portfolio as well to complement this move into the renewable world, because that's the future at the end of the world.
It certainly is. Thank you so much for joining us here on LNG TV. Enjoy the rest of Gastech, and nice talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me.